All right, mates, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing and Eats. The road to Chickamauga has arrived. What a season for the KFL. We've been covering the KFL for over a year plus, year and a half, even the end of last season and into this season. Been a crazy, crazy season for the KFL. In its second season, just crazy, crazy developments. Been fun to watch. I think if you're a kayak angler, it's been fun to see the concept kind of take off early in the second season. And then a lot, but and again with everything there comes to a lot of ups and downs and stuff for the most part. But you know what? When it's all said and done, it is just about fishing. I mean, that's really all it is. And a lot of times the show and the build up and the hype and and all that to get views and get stream views and to get all that stuff that, broadcast shows, all that at the side becomes a sideshow. In reality, the stars of the show are not KFL Live. It's not Motion Sports. It's not KBBT, Hindsight 2020. It's not, JL Scott Fishing. It's not anybody, commentary or anything like that. It's the anglers. That is the star of the show. And so everyone can be the judge as to whether or not really effectively anglers are being elevated on an individual basis. Everyone can be that judge themselves. They don't need some schmuck on YouTube to make that observation for them. I think everybody can make their own observation. For this, the road to Chickamauga for the championship, okay, it's got a lot of dynamics. I've been kind of quietly just talking with people and kind of getting an idea of kind of what's going to go down, what could go down. People that have fished Lake Chickamauga before. It's been a few years since I fished there. And was not from a kayak. So totally different from the Watts Bar Dam, down on the lake. And remember, this lake is about 60 miles dam to dam. I don't know what the boundaries have been set, if any. Maybe it's just dam to dam. I don't know if they've piggybacked anything that's been happening with Bass or Kentucky Lake and all that with KBF and done something I haven't heard. I'm not that dialed in to know if they've set any boundaries, what I would call lateral boundaries. But it is pretty much dam to dam. And when you factor in that on Chickamauga, that's a lot of water. And it's a lot of different water, okay? And I'm approaching it from, a boater standpoint, okay? In fairness, mates, not kayaking. Chickamauga in the boating community has always had the reputation, mates, of being a big lake that fishes small. Go on any MLF angler, any BFL, any co-angler fishing page, talking about events on Lake Chickamauga. And that's from the boater side. Now, from the kayak side, does it still fish small, or because you're in a kayak platform, everything's big anyway? And that perspective, and maybe they might not have that perspective. But the lake can be very, very different when you talk to people. And I've spent the last week talking to people in both the boater side, boater events, and then also people that have fished in a kayak. And depending on where you're fishing, if you look right now at the weather that's happening over the last week going into the event Saturday, you're looking at a 6 to 7, 8 degree change on the lake, the different parts of the lake. So it does come into play where you launch from. Now remember, kayaks are not, this is a motor event, okay? So these anglers are allowed to have their trolling motors. But still, this isn't the boater event where they can make long runs. They can rig runs. Okay? This is kind of like predicated on your pre-fishing and getting dialed into an area, because you have to launch, and in terms of the time. Remember the time frame of the event, okay? You don't want to be making long runs in a kayak when you could be fishing. Okay? That's just the downside of that, as opposed to being in a bass boat and being able to run and gun that strategy. So you're looking at 5 to 7 degree changes between down towards the Chickamauga Dam, then up towards like Middle Valley area, up towards Watts Bar, It's going to be warmer to the north, obviously, than the south, believe it or not. Your winds are different on different parts of the lake. You usually can get like a northwest kind of like 5 to 8 mile an hour thing on the lake. So all that's going to come into play, and of course the water conditions and all that. But the temperatures, a lot of people talked about. Oh, it's going to be in the 70s. It's going to be no, it's not. Okay, it's going to be in the 70s, but at like 4 or 5 o'clock. Okay, this is October, mates. It's not going to be 70 degrees at lunchtime. Okay, it's going to be 50s. So the temperature is going to be probably 52 to 58, depending on where you are on that lake, during the prime, probably, catch times. In the morning, very well, will be low 50s, maybe below 50. Depending on what happens, Friday into, looks like it's going to warm a little bit Friday, and then, we'll see what happens on Saturday. Going to be some overcast skies, that could play to some different people's strengths. But from what I'm hearing, okay, through that back line, that back phone, somebody's on them. And it ain't gotten out yet, but they're on them. And it's going to be interesting because both teams are being very quiet. But I know one team is on them. And it's an interesting of whether or not that team is going to double down on that area with all of their anglers, or double, or just with 2 of their anglers and send their other 2 somewhere else for a plan B approach. If somehow the conditions change. But it's going to be very interesting. So let's talk about Lake Chickamauga in terms of the anglers themselves. Now, on the basis of things, Chickamauga should set up for the Coosa Kingfishers. So the road to Chickamauga is your Coosa Kingfishers from the south and your Massachusetts Maulers from the north, returning for the second time to the KFL Championship. And a lot of people are kind of underrating, again, the Massachusetts Maulers. I want to remind everybody that's been following this. And I know a lot of people don't follow the KFL, and a lot of people carp on me all the time about how, don't give that trail, don't spend any more time on that trail. That trail is just, don't waste your time on that trail. That's just ridiculous. Why are you covering that trail? Like, no one's paying attention to that trail. Whatever. Because it's interesting, and I like the concept. And I actually support the trail. I think it's a great concept and a great format. All the other issues aside, again, when we're just talking about fishing and the quality of the angler and the quality of the fishing inside the format is outstanding. That's why I still cover it. It's not. I mean, the other stuff is a clown show and a shit show and whatever, but that's managerial stuff. That's not the anglers. That's not the players. And there's a time and a place for all of that. And there's a time and place to celebrate the anglers. They're very, very 2 different things. When you're talking about actual events on the water between 2 teams, remember this is a 4v4 match, game, however you want to define it, on Fishing Chaos on Saturday. You should be able to find it under the KFL tournament. And you can check that out. So you got 4 anglers from Massachusetts and 4 anglers from the Coosa Kingfishers. Well, I'm not positive on who these anglers are going to be yet. I'm not that dialed in to pay too much attention to. There's a lot going on with MLF, KBF, Bass, with the Drew Gregory stuff in the last week or so. I've not really been too dialed into the guys. I assume Kuz is going to be Coley. I can't imagine him not sending Coley McGowan. I can't imagine him not sending Jordan Marshall. Probably Joe McElroy. 4th, I don't know, Chuck Wise or Dan Perry, maybe. I mean, Dan did some really, like Dan, for example, was pretty quiet in the regular season, but has had a really good playoff run in terms of landing fish at a great event a few weeks back. That'll be kind of an interesting thing. The Maulers, obviously, I would be very, very surprised if it was not Ken Wood, Derek Brundle, Matt Cunnett, and John Ferreira. I would be absolutely baffled if it wasn't them, or maybe not one of them and another one. That would be who I would think. And a lot of people would be like, be amazed to see what the deal is with the realities. The realities are the Massachusetts Maulers as individual anglers, they don't rank that high in the statistics in the regular season. Remember, this is a team concept, okay? Not an individual concept. And a lot of times people focus on individual accolades on these broadcasting motion sports shows, okay? They don't focus on a team and what a team is actually doing, building itself to the playoffs. That is why, if there was a coach or a manager, okay, not an owner, screw that shit, okay, whatever. Someone managing the team, one of the anglers, would get coach of the year, in my opinion. General manager, coach of the year, okay, would be the Massachusetts Maulers, not the Coosa Kingfishers. Coosa Kingfishers were absolutely dominant at home, but this isn't Neely Henry. Now, that being said, Coosa Kingfishers has got some freaking horses that have fished Chickamauga just back in June, on June 4th, for Hobie. Jordan Marshall threw in an 84.75 and a 91.50 day one, day two Hobie. And he's on Coosa's team. Joe McElroy, 91.5 himself on Saturday, then dropped to 57.25 on Sunday. That right there tells you what Chickamauga is all about. Look at that disparity. A 91 on day one and a 57 on day two. That certainly can happen to you on Chickamauga with the kind of bite that goes down on this lake. But they got two, and that's not even talking about Coley McCowan, okay? Coley McCowan registered 176 inches not once, but twice this season, okay? And so you want to think about that, all right? Now, I think Coley McCowan, it's kind of interesting dynamic. Coley McCowan fished 6 events this year and is the third highest ranked, now again, regular season stats, third highest ranked angler in the KFL, okay? Averages 126.88 inches per match, okay? That coupled with, think about that, even if he has an off day, okay? And an off day for Coley McCowan is like 85 inches, okay? 90 inches. He gets 90, Jordan gets 80, Joe gets 90, okay? See what I'm saying here? This is what the Massachusetts Maulers are up against. So a lot of people are putting the easy money on Coosa. Now, KFL has already come out with a 2 to 2.5 point spread on this match in favor of Coosa. Okay. Again, easy money. That would be the easy bet, right? On the surface of things, that would be the easy bet. Massachusetts has Ken Wood ranked 9th. But you need to think about this. There's only 2 anglers, potentially only 2 anglers in this event that are ranked in the top 30 in stats for the whole entire league. That would be Ken Wood and Coley McCowan. I think the next one would be John Ferreira at 34, ranked 34. He averages about 70 inches a match. Thing about this is it's interesting is Massachusetts has Ken Wood has played 7 matches this season. Regular season now. We're not talking about playoffs. Derek Brundle, only 3. Matt Con 6. John Ferreira, 5. Those guys are pretty, other than Derek, okay, because Derek goes off and fishes a lot of national stuff, okay? I mean, the guy went all the way to California, for God's sakes, this year, okay, to compete in an event, all right? I think it was Clearwater or something. Okay, so those guys are playing, those guys, they get it. Team. Look at the Motor City on the road. Granite State on the road, okay? They get it. They get the team. They didn't care about the losses in the beginning of the season when all the pundits for KFL were beating them down, okay? Because last year, they faced the same exact thing. The Lone Star Bandits undefeated, if I'm not mistaken, going into the championship. And everybody talked up the Lone Star Bandits. All the punsters, right? All the easy money on the Lone Star Bandits. Massachusetts Maulers went in there and won. What's going to be different this time? I don't think much. just from my perspective. I mean, it could be below out for sure. I mean, it's October, the weather, things can set up different, better for one team than another, depending on. But these northeastern anglers, man, they're not really scared of bad weather. They're not really scared of cold weather. They're not really worried about they're used to all that, fishing in that kind of environment in the Northeast, you know? So again, this isn't the summertime on Neely Henry. Okay. This is a little bit different. And so I'm not really sure that the blowout, a lot of that noise, could it happen? For sure. But let's look at what Massachusetts Maulers have done. Last season, they took out a Lone Star Bandit team that like crushed people. Now remember that Lone Star. It was funny today. I saw some other people responding to I guess a comment that was made a day or so or whatever it was on social media. The Lone Star Bandits still kind of hold 2 records in the KFL. Lone Star Bandits have the highest inch total of any event in the KFL over 2 years, and they also have the most players banned. so they hold 2 records to go into the KFL Hall of Fame KFL record books as it stands right now. I think it was like 207 or 210. I can't remember what it was on Fairfield. I think it was against Louisiana Hurricanes earlier this season before they got banned. They dropped freaking like 207 or 210 inches on them boys. And in Louisiana Hurricanes, in fairness to them, it wasn't like they had a bad day. They dropped like 190, 193 or something. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. It's crazy that the league doesn't have that team anymore. A team from Texas, like fishing on a fish factory like Fairfield anymore. But it's just really interesting. I was talking to a reporter from, a reporter guy from Palestine. I guess it's Palestine, Texas, which is near Fairfield, about the Lone Star Bandit ban and the whole story behind all that stuff. And, how they're kind of like, they're looking at perspective is now they don't get any teams. They don't get teams coming, they don't get people coming, to Fairfield to the right, like, any stories or anything of that about it. And, it's kind of like, it's kind of a bummer. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty much a bummer. How that whole deal went down is pretty much a bummer. I don't get it, but that's the reality. But Massachusetts, again, just like against Lone Star Bandits last year, no one's really talking about them. Like, it's like, And yet they rolled through Motor City. They rolled through Granite State on the road. They win on the road, mates, which tells me those guys are seasoned guys who are all about business. They are all about the business. Okay, and they don't care about what people say about them. They don't, because they're back. And when they drop like 2 game matches in a row or whatever, and they were taking it all, you didn't hear a chirp from those guys. Right? No whataboutisms, no coming back personal attacks against people that were like cracking on them. They just got back to work because they know the season's a long season, mates. And it's a team format. It's not individual accolades celebrated, okay? It's not all that, okay? Where they talk about people individually and their individual performances. It's about how you perform within the frame of a team. Remember this, okay? Derek Brundle is ranked 134th in the KFL. Everybody knows Derek Brundle is a freaking hammer. But he's 134th in the KFL, Connett's 43rd, Ferreira's 34, and then Ken Wood is 9, right? Like, if you saw that on paper, you would be like, that team isn't going to no championship. If you put money on that team without knowing the names of the anglers, and you just put money on their stats, your friends would laugh their asses off at you. But those stats have names, and those guys are freaking dialed in on the road and know how to read lakes, rivers, and impoundments. And they've proven it now for not 1, but 2 years. Has Kuza struggled off of Neely Henry? Some will say yes. Have they still won? Yeah, I think they dropped one match, I think, on the run road match, maybe. 1 or 2. But they're rock solid at home, but they're not at home. So again, and then you look at their guys. They've got Jordan Marshall. He's ranked 129th in the KFL. What's that tell you? He's only fished 3 matches, just like Darryl Brundle. Okay, so again, got to throw that out. Okay, Coley McCowan's ranked 3rd. Dan Perry's ranked 93rd. Joe McElroy's ranked 177. Okay, what does that mean? Nothing. Like, because Joe's fished Chickamauga plenty of times, I think. Like, he just fished it in June. Okay, had a great day. Chuck Wise ranked 81. But the key about this, depending on who actually fishes for Kuza, is Coley McCowan, Joe McElroy, and Chuck Wise all have one thing in common. They all only fished 3 events this year. Out of 8, 9, 10, I guess now, out of 10 Masters. I don't know. Well, three regular season events. I'm sure they fished in the playoffs. So let me correct myself. They only fished 3 out of 8 regular season matches. The guys on the Maulers, other than Derek Brundle, they're like 6 and 7 matches. So they're used to playing together, okay, understanding each other, communicating on the water. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. That is what it's going to come down to. I do not think it's going to be one guy takes on full, like one guy just blows it out. I just don't. Chickamauga just doesn't. Rarely Chickamauga does. It's even in the boater stuff. It just rarely sets up that way. It's usually all or nothing. Like everybody's on them, and it's tied up in smaller areas on tournament day, or it's just feast or famine, like in terms of that. So maybe it happens. Maybe somebody gets on a stretch of water that's clear up, or maybe a little warmer into pockets, and the fish aren't suspended and they're moving back. They're still up and back, or whatever. We'll really see what happens. But I think this is a test for Kuza. I don't think the pressure is on the Massachusetts Maulers. It's just where I'm coming from, mates. I think they've been doing this all season long, and they're ready. The line of 2.5. I mean, that's a pretty tight line. That's a pretty more or less meaningless line, I think, for a match that's being proposed, because it's kind of like saying I don't really have a clue. I always find those spreads below like 2.5, 2 to be kind of like just toss up matches, like But we'll see what happens. I'd be interested to see what the total would be. Like, what will Kuza or Massachusetts Maulers need in length to win this event? That's more of the number I like to hear people talk about. Not these ridiculously imitative NFL point spread stuff. Like, because I think that just ends up being meaningless. Like, let's talk about, like, what do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be like 175, 180? What do you think it's going to be? It's going to be on the lower end, tighter matchup. So, you got to figure that stuff. Everyone's got to figure that out, I'm just thinking, is I don't think Massachusetts Maulers, once again, year 2 is getting the level of respect as a team that they deserve. I'm sure that could change. I think the KFL will be broadcasting before Saturday. Now there's only those 2 teams to focus on, so it's a lot easier to focus on that than during the season when there's a lot of matches going on, and the same people tend to get spoken about all the time, over and over on certain teams, and a lot of teams get left out. But it'll be also interesting to see, because I saw a thread on one of the groups. I think it might have been Kayak Bass Nation or something, where it was like, okay, well, what's the payout for the champion? I don't know. I got a few messages last week about it. I know some percentages were batted about. I think Todd Patrick kind of during the divisional round put out a number, but he said it had to be verified, by the league. I don't really think that's ever been revealed or stated. So a lot of people were kind of like, well, what's going on, like, with that, in terms of what's the actual guy winning, or the guy on the team, I guess. I don't know how that works. If, like, the guys who actually fish the championship, do they end up getting a larger payout than the other 4 guys on the team, or does the whole team just get the loot and then it gets split by the owner? I don't know how that all works. And hopefully they'll reveal all that. They'll have an award show, and they'll reveal the dollar figures, like ABF, freaking Hobie, big freaking cardboard sign says you won $11,000, you won $8,000. They should have a cardboard sign for every single one of those anglers, anglers on Chickamauga that win and a cardboard sign for the runner-up, or at least one cardboard sign that has the amount that the team won. I just think that's good for the league so people can get their heads around the fact of, okay, well, how much money are these guys fishing for? Like, I mean, I talked to guys in the last 2 weeks because I'm working on a story, that spent upwards of, anywhere from $1,900 to $2,600 this season in the KFL. That's out-of-pocket expenses for travel, launch permits, whatever, gas, eating, staying. $1,900 to $2,600 for travel. And everybody that I talk to, out of the money. So they're done. They're not getting any money from the KFL in terms of payouts because they didn't make it to the championship or the semifinals. I think it's the Final Four actually get the juice. So people that's why people are seeing that stuff and starting to hear that stuff as guys are leaving the league and kind of, addressing why they left the league. It's a losing proposition unless you get into the Final Four. Just like the boater. If you follow the boater videos, you can see that it is not a poor man's game. Okay, like in the boater community, you got to have money to enter these events. You got to have money, and it's not most guys lose at the end of the year. Okay, go watch Bradley Holloman, a couple other videos like that when they talk about it. He just did a live with Todd Castledine, and like they talked about, they freaking lose money. And he's going to the Elite Series. Holloman's going to the Elite Series. But he lost money, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you got to do. So it's like, again, so people are kind of like, people always bust on payouts for different organizations as a percentage. I think, like, KBS pretty good. I think it's in the 75%, maybe 80%. Maybe even more now with this year at the KBF National Championship. But like Bass is like 71%, MLF is like 81% as in terms of payout from entry fees and all that stuff historically. I don't know what KFL is. So people pose that question because you only get like 50% goes here, 30% goes here, whatever. But okay, at some point people want to know what the dollars are, not the percentages. And the percentages of what? Percentages of entry fees by the anglers or percentages of sponsorship money, right? That's how it works on the boater side. I don't know how it works here. So can't tell you. I mean, I had a question that was on the YouTube channel. It was like, what are they playing for? The championship, but I don't know how much money. Okay. It's like a prize fight, but I don't know what the purse is. Okay. I'm sure they'll reveal that probably on championship Saturday. But that's just it. Lake Chickamauga, road to Chickamauga is finally here for two teams in the KFL this year. Two really, really good teams with some good dudes on it, for sure. Great mix of guys, young and old, middle-aged, like me, experienced anglers, and probably some anglers that maybe some people may not be familiar with. But in this crop, you got guys that people know these names. I really think, though, this could be an event where one of these guys that is in the four that maybe people haven't really talked about could shine. No pressure. Just go out there, find some water, find some fish. I really think that this could be that kind of event, the way the weather's setting up. It's October. Because very rarely this time of year do you just get on one fish. This is not June. This is not like August at Lake Chickamauga, okay? Whether you're fishing down Harrison area, towards the Chickamauga Dam, or you're going up towards Watts Bar. This is October. And normally if you get into you're getting into some fish. And it's not just a solo largemouth bass. So keep an eye on that board. And also keep an eye and see how these fish come in on Saturday morning and whether or not there's any gamesmanship going on early in the morning where guys are holding back some fish that they don't post up. So going to be interesting. I wish the guys a safe event. I hope everybody has a great event. There are no issues for any kind of safety or DQ or boundaries or any of that stuff. I just hope it's a nice, clean event. They get on to catch some fish. I hope it's a tight event. But I will tell you, as I know a lot of people are going to lean Kuza, I'm going to lean underdog 2 year in a row. As my buddy down in Texas said, repeat. I'm looking for the repeat from the Massachusetts Maulers. So go on out there, Derek Brundle, Ken Wood, Matt, and John, if you're the four, go out there, get it done. Get it done and be two-time KFL champions.